Hello, my name is Jamie White, and today we'll be discussing what is supplier diversity. Now, have you ever heard the term supplier diversity, maybe around your professional office or just in passing, maybe online, and you've thought to yourself, you know, I wonder what that is and what does it entail and what do we mean by supplier diversity? Well, today we're going to discuss it. Welcome back. Once again, this is Jamie, and today we will be discussing what is supplier diversity. Now, I'm hoping that this is the beginning of a series where we discuss the various aspects of supplier diversity, what it entails, and really go in depth in terms of the different avenues that make up, or the different components that make up supplier diversity, and what makes it successful, what makes it not successful, and what you can do if you're listening as a person who is operating within the supplier diversity space, what you can do to add to your program, whether you're beginning or continuing to grow it. Now, as you can see, just to start off, this is brought to you by Supplier News. We are an organization that looks to just educate um, individuals as well as businesses on the different components of supplier diversity as well as small business. So, trying to inform everyone about what's going on in the industry throughout the nation as well as throughout the world. And if you're interested in supporting us, feel free to take down the information below and visit us at suppliertnews.com. Now, to begin, what is supplier diversity? As you can see, we have the terminology here. If you want, you can read through. If maybe you're in a quiet place and you can't really listen to me, go ahead and read through. That's why I put it up. But if you're not, let's go ahead and let's just discuss it real quick. So as you can see, the term supplier diversity refers to the proactive business program that promotes the purchasing of goods and services from previously underrepresented communities. What this means is that it's really focused on the fact that supplier diversity is a business program, right? There is sometimes confusion on the fact that this may be within a business, at the very least, this may be some type of, I don't know, quota system or anything along those lines. That just simply isn't correct. There is a strategy that needs to be involved when you're operating a supplier diversity program. It's not just something that you can sit down and say, hey, today we have a supplier diversity program, so go out, find small and diverse suppliers, and get back to me. With it being a program and needing strategy, there has to be goals that define the strategy, as well as different metrics, excuse me, that go about it or included on it. So it is definitely something that has to be integrated in a business. Needs that leadership and then some type of hierarchy so that the strategy is being pushed throughout the company or organization, whatever it may be. Um, as you can see, the second point, these suppliers, in terms of just the type of suppliers that make up supplier diversity, they can be, as you can see, minority owned, women owned, veteran owned, LGBT owned or LGBTQ, service disabled, veteran owned, disabled owned, and then for some supplier diversity programs, they also include just regular small businesses. So sometimes you'll hear supplier diversity and small business, or sometimes you'll just hear supplier diversity. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're just looking at minority owned, women owned types of businesses, for example. It can also include small business. So make sure that you're aware of that. And then lastly, the purpose of the business strategy is to help diversify specific needs, specific corporate supply chain, and help to reflect the demographics of the community in which the company and or organization, where that may be nonprofit, city, state, in which they're located in. Thus touching upon the point of the small business. So if you're in an area that may not have a lot of, I don't know, African Americans or Hispanic Americans or Asian Americans, and it's maybe made up of, I don't know, 95% white Americans, you can still put forth a supplier diversity program just focusing on small businesses. So let's get into the different types of supplier diversity businesses. So we spoke about minority owned, women owned, and those businesses, etc. But here we just have a more of a fleshed out look at what we're talking about. So for a diverse business, when we're talking about a diverse business, we're really talking about a business that is at least 51% owned, operated, and controlled by one or more excuse me, in combination of the following. So you have the minority-owned, women-owned, and then we break it down by the different ethnic groups. In particular, when you're in America. So this list is American centric, if you will, but it can also go towards other countries as well. The only one that I probably didn't include is so for example like Native American, and probably we'd have to include a different type of a piece if we're looking at different other countries such as like Australia. But as you can see, women owned, veteran owned, service disabled veteran, LGBTQ, and then disabled. So once again, if you have a company that is majority owned, 51% or more, owned by these types of groups, you have a diverse business. And the great news is that when you're dealing with different programs, they sometimes like to count spend, if you will, for different buckets. So if it's a black female, for example, maybe a veteran, that's three different buckets that you're hitting when you're dealing with diverse businesses. Now, if you're dealing with supplier diversity with small businesses, it's a little bit of a different look here, but you're still looking at the same piece, which is the fact that you're looking for businesses within your local community generally that you're looking to support. So for small business, as you can see, there's really the big piece here that you usually get when you're talking about small business is the amount of employees. So generally, it's about 500 or less when you're talking about in the major capacity what a small business is. Obviously, it can be a lot less than that, but generally, the 500 employee mark is usually the top piece there. Um, in addition to that, when you're looking at the various different types of NAICS codes, which we'll get into in a second, there may be other identifying qualities or qualifications for a small business. So as you can see, fewer employees and or less annual revenue than the bigger, larger corporations. Maybe shipment sales, assets, annual growth, excuse me. So things like that may also be included when you're talking about employees. So as you can see at the point below, in America, the Small Business Administration, or the SBA, typically tags a small business by its North American Industry Classification System. So that's really key to note here, because I don't want to get too involved with the NAICS code and what it is. We can separate that out for another discussion. But essentially, a NAICS code is a specific number that the SBA gives certain businesses, and depending on that number, so for example, that number may represent, shipments. Another number may represent technology. Another number may represent farming, for example. So depending on the number that you have, that will talk to you that will show you what is the qualifications for a small business. The reason why they do that is because a small business as defined by technology, for example, is going to be a lot different than a small business defined in construction. The reason being, it's very easy to start a technology company. So because of that, if you're looking at this, well, not saying this is the formula, but if you're looking at the lowest 10% in terms of employees and revenue, it's going to be a lot different than the lowest 10% when you're talking about a construction company. Just because you got to think about all the things that it takes to create an established construction company within America. So as you can see, it can range from anything from 200,000 to 20 million. Just really depends on what your NAICS code is. Verifying diverse suppliers. So we've talked about, we understand what a diverse supplier is. It can also be a small business, but how do we keep from just a random person on the street saying, hey, I know that you guys have a supplier diversity program, and I'm a diverse business as well. That's where we get into verifying these types of suppliers. So as you can see here, in order to verify that a business is small or diverse, a certification is generally provided by a third party. That third party can be the SBA, as an example. That third party can be, a nonprofit organization, which once again we'll get into on the next slide. It really just depends on the type of supplier that's being verified. Now, when you're talking about verification, just some of the things that go into it is the fact that in some instances, organizations will actually go out to a company's business to verify that they are indeed operating the way that they are claiming to. A couple of things that you can see when we're talking about verifications in terms of what they're identifying and verifying is, as you can see in the second subpoint, point one, the ethnicity or gender of the majority owner, day-to-day operational control, location, business function, and more. So there are organizations that actually go out and ensure that these companies are operating the way that they say that they do, or yeah, the way that they say that they do, in order to give larger corporations that may not have the time to really verify suppliers that peace of mind. Now, the different diversity certifications. So I'm not going to go too in depth on on the different types of diversity certifications. Just real quick, just a list of the major ones throughout the nation. Which, as you can see in the top couple of ones, we have the National Minority Supply Development Council, Women's Business Enterprise National Council, National Veteran Business Development Council, and GLCC, et cetera, et cetera. But if you are a supplier who's watching this video and is interested in maybe becoming a verified diverse supplier, these are the organizations that you can go to, depending upon what you qualify for. And again, there are a couple of organizations, well, actually, maybe even all of these organizations, I may one day do a video on just so that you can understand a little bit more about them and the benefits and what they're trying to accomplish. Now, if we look at an international level, supplier diversity is really big when it comes to America. There are other countries where supplier diversity or the idea of supplier diversity, purchasing from small and diverse businesses, is growing. Two ones, for example, are Canada and the United Kingdom. I mean, not to say they're the only ones, but those are really the ones that are getting the major pushes right now. But there are also additional ones as well, and you can see from the list below, or on your screen, excuse me. So it's really not just an American concept; it's really pushed itself out on an international level as well, and we're seeing it continue to grow even um, even more. Now, when we're taking a look at small business certifications and how they're verified, it's a little bit different, a little bit more leeway when you're dealing with a small business. As you can see, the first piece self-certified. Now, there are different cities and states where you can essentially register your company and self-certify as a small business. That is possible. There are also different companies that, if you're doing business with them, they'll allow you to self-certify as well. It just really depends on the company, kind of where you're located in that piece. Local government, sometimes they also have a process in place where they can verify that you're a small business. So definitely check that out wherever you're located. Regional industry organizations. So for example, a really good one is California Utilities. Um, if you are a utility company and you're looking for or to be identified as a small business, there's a process in place there that you can check out if you so choose. And then lastly, the federal government or the SBA. Within the SBA, they have their own various programs where a company can identify itself as a small business. Now, obviously, the first piece is you can just simply sign up at the SBA and identify yourself as a small business. It's called SAM.gov, if you are interested in learning more about that. There are also different various programs if you're looking to win business with the federal government itself. A couple of those include the 8A, Hub Zone, W, WOSB, so women-owned small business, and then veteran-owned small business program as well. So it just really depends on what you qualify for when you're dealing with the SBA as you're going through. And again, I'm not going to get too specific in these different programs. If you're interested, definitely check them out. But again, just different programs based on maybe where you're located, type of supplier you are, and the different federal contracts you're interested in going for. Now, quick history of supplier diversity. I was debating whether I should put this in here, but I figured for those who are interested in learning just a tad bit more about supplier diversity and how it got started and how to get to where we are today, figured I'd throw this in here just so that you just have some idea on how it was shaped. So I think we can all guess that it started during the Civil Rights movement, in particular after the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So that actually helped expand federal contracting opportunities to minorities. So essentially, first started with minorities and then expanded to women and then expanded further up from there. As you can see, the biggest growth, in point two, the biggest growth for the future supply diversity came under Nixon administration, where in 1969, President Nixon established the Office of Minority Business Enterprise, which would later become the Minority Business Development Agency, or the MBDA, if you're familiar with that. Then as it expands, the government actually required minority-owned businesses, business contracting, as it grew. Now, just moving a little bit further, and again, this is here on the screen, so definitely check it out, read it, and if you want to learn more, feel free. But after it started originally with the government and the federal government pushing minority contracting amongst itself, the National Minority Supplier Development Council actually began in 1972, and that's when it really expanded to private companies, and that's when private companies really began creating their own programs and looking to do business with particular minority-owned and women-owned companies. Now, over the past, I want to say 10, 15 years, it's even expanded further. So now we're, the big push a couple of years ago, when I say a couple, probably like 5 to 10 years ago, it was veteran-owned companies, and now, currently we're seeing a really big push when it comes to LGBTQ companies, and then disabled companies as well. So it's a piece that has continued to grow, and it's continuing to expand even to today. So just a couple of statistics that you might want to be aware of, just when it comes to minority-owned and women-owned companies. As this continues to grow, these educational presentations, I guess, I do want to touch upon the various breakdowns or the various types of businesses, so like minority-owned, women-owned, etc., and give them their own due so that you can understand a little bit more about where they are and how they function in the world. But just some really quick stats. In 2018, the SBA showed that there was about 30.2 million small businesses in America, of which 8 million are minority-owned companies. Now, of the 30.2 million small businesses, about 80% were non-employer firms. So that basically means that they don't have any employees. So on the flip side, when you're looking at a small business, only 20% actually hire employees, which is pretty interesting. So most small businesses are just one person owned, kind of out there just operating by itself. Now, if you take that 20% and you push it to minority-owned businesses, then what that essentially means is that about 1.6 million minority businesses have some employees that they are hiring within their company. And then if you also push that to women-owned businesses, which make up about 13 million of the businesses in America, you can also say that of the 13 million, about 2.6 women-owned businesses have employees that they're currently hiring. So when you're looking at that breakdown, those are the businesses that would most likely have an opportunity to win a contract with these organizations that are looking to purchase from small and diverse businesses. So supplier diversity debate, this is extremely concise in terms of what it could be, but just kind of a couple. I just wanted to do 3 points on things in favor and three things against, just so that you're aware moving forward. Just in favor, in place, supplier diversity, positive or pro, if you will, is it's in place to reflect a growing diverse population and customer base. So I'll get more into that in the why is supplier diversity important. But as you are probably well aware, obviously the demographics of particular America are changing, and we want to make sure that, with the changing demographics, our businesses are matching that. Supporting historically disenfranchised groups, so those who have been discriminated against probably need assistance in, growing their wealth throughout America, and then reflecting the local community makeup. So, for example, if your community, whatever city you're in, if 40% of your city is, say, Hispanic American, but the local government or local companies are only doing business with 2% Hispanic companies, that may be a problem, or not may, that definitely is a problem. There's definitely a lot more opportunity out there for Hispanics doing business in that example. Now, for those against, supplier diversity is a quota. So we want We went over that. That's a misunderstanding. It's definitely not. Supplier diversity has no return on investment. That's also not true as well. And again, I'll get more into that in terms of why supplier diversity is important. But that is another misnomer that we definitely need to talk about. And then supplier diversity is a racist program, which once again, that's just, I mean, just outlandish and just simply not true, especially when you look at the statistics. And even with supplier diversity programs, I mean, we're talking about, you know, 5 or 6 different groups, disabled, veteran, LGBT, minority, and women who are probably getting 10, 15% of the pie, if that, and that's on the high end. So definitely, if it is, it's not working. So types of supplier diversity programs. Now, what I did was I list out just the type of, you know, businesses that look to employ various small and diverse companies. So, as you can see, just private and public corporations definitely have these in place. I think it was estimated at one point that about half of the Fortune 100 companies had a supply diversity, like an active supply diversity program in place. Local and federal governments, those are really big, obviously, because it started in the federal government. Different education, nonprofits, hospitals, utilities, and more. I probably should have put and more instead of other, but you know, definitely it's in a lot of spaces and it's in a lot of different industries, a lot of type of businesses, whether billion-dollar businesses or just a high couple hundred thousand. Everyone's kind of in this space looking to do business with small and diverse suppliers to help affect their economy. Supply diversity operations. So how does it operate? Um, how does this run? So we now understand what it is, a business program that you can implement in your organization to connect with and buy from small and diverse businesses. But how does it work? So if we look to point two, supplier diversity can be managed by members of the purchasing, sales, marketing, human resources, or executive teams. So in my experience, I've seen supplier diversity operate in all of these different departments. It really depends on how big the it really depends on where you're trying to get your program to as it sits today. Um, Supplier diversity should always have some type of connection with your purchasing departments, simply because those are the guys who are going out and buying different products and services. So if there is no communication between your supplier diversity person or department and your purchasing department, that is definitely an issue. In addition, there should also be some type of understanding when it comes to the executive team, so that they are helping, assisting to ensure that there's again one some type of goals there, and people who are aspiring to meet those goals. And again, we'll get more into that as well, hopefully as we move forward. See then again, human resources, marketing, sales. These are additional programs, or excuse me, departments that should also be aware and communicate, as well as support and work with the supply diversity department. But the two big ones I would say would be the purchasing and then the executive team. Because if you get those two in place, then everybody else is going to fall in line and support it as well. The last point, the effectiveness of supply diversity business strategy typically depends on the level of support it is given by the leadership. So, like I spoke about when it comes to the executive team, but when it comes to supply diversity specifically, it's really all about the leadership. If the leadership doesn't get behind it, and this is just something that's just kind of there to be there, it will be stagnant and it won't grow. But it really depends on what you are trying to get from your supply diversity program. If you have one in place simply because your customers are asking you to do it, and you're just simply trying to meet those requirements, kind of as a compliance effort, then that's fine. You just need to be honest about why your supply diversity program is in place and what you're trying to accomplish. However, if you're looking to try to grow that business or that program and really hit the marks that it can hit when it comes to affecting the economy, local economy, and the community, then it definitely needs to have that leadership push, as well as um, some type of communication and connection with purchasing. Now, I'm going to wrap it up here. I definitely want to thank you for listening to this presentation. I'm not exactly sure how long it is. Probably really, really long. It feels long, but hopefully that was informative. Hopefully you gained a lot out of it. As you can see, I left some of my social media on the page here. If you are looking to follow us and learn more about the daily upkeep of supply diversity in small business, feel free to do that. Once again, this is a new thing that I'm doing. I'm going to try to get something new out every week if possible. Hopefully, if I'm not too busy, and answer any questions that you may have. So feel free to shoot me a note. If you have any feedback or anything along those lines, let me know. Please, I probably should have said this at the beginning, but please like, share the video, and subscribe to our YouTube. With that being said, thank you so much for your time and have a great day.